The Ford Maverick Lobo is a truck from the past. A past where trucks weren't all tall, towering, and laid back. A past where they could be low, slinky, and fast. The Maverick Lobo is a return to street trucks. You know, the super cool ones. This is the 2025 Ford Maverick Lobo, an adorable return to lowered street trucks. And I'm Alanis King. Let's go for a drive and stick around for the end of this video to get this Maverick's full report card. The Ford Maverick compact pickup is not the first Ford Maverick. In the 1970s, there was the Ford Maverick compact car, which came in 2- and 4-door models. When the Maverick returned as a pickup in 2021, Ford marketed it as the truck for people who never knew they wanted a truck. People naturally thought the name was a nod to that old Maverick, but apparently it wasn't. Ford said the target millennial market just likes the word Maverick. That's probably why it's one of the most popular baby names in America right now. The Maverick Lobo specifically is a throwback to old street trucks, but we'll talk about that more soon. Ford says the Maverick Lobo is a new canvas for modern street truck builds, and it starts at $35,255 American dollars. This is a higher trim that starts at $40,000. The heart of that canvas is a turbocharged 2-liter EcoBoost engine that makes 250 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. That power goes through a 7-speed automatic transmission with paddle shifters to all 4 wheels. The Maverick Lobo's power is unchanged from the regular EcoBoost engine, but there are some performance and appearance changes. This car has sport-tuned suspension and the steering rack is from the Ford Kuga, and there are also some very specific changes. To start, the Maverick Lobo is lowered. The front, in terms of ride height, is ½ inch lower than the regular Maverick. The back is 1.12 inches lower, and the roof height is 0.8 inches lower. The brakes are also bigger, and the dual-piston front calipers, which you can't see with these wheels, even though I love these wheels, are from the Ford Focus ST hot hatch that's still sold in Europe. There's better cooling, too. There's a transmission oil cooler, as well as a larger radiator and fan from the Maverick's 4,000-pound 4K towing package. There's also a new Lobo drive mode, which Ford says improves cornering, grip, and stability, as well as minimizes understeer, which is when a car doesn't turn enough in a corner. Ford says the drive mode is for closed courses because it'll feed the truck torque and reduce intervention by the stability control system. In vehicles, stability control kicks in to make sure the car doesn't spin or do unnatural things, basically putting it back in a straighter line. A straighter line means understeer, and to limit that also limits understeer, letting you get a little wilder. Ford was so stoked on this drive mode that they set up an autocross course for us to run when I attended the drive event in San Diego recently. But on my autocross day, the course flooded with rain and autocross got canceled. Sunny California, right? The Maverick Lobo also has a twin-clutch rear drive unit with torque vectoring, and I was talking to the Ford engineers and they said that twin-clutch unit is the same one that I drove on the Ford Bronco Sport Sasquatch last year. The twin-clutch rear drive unit is really cool because there are 2 clutch packs that each independently operate the 2 rear wheels. So this means you have better traction in on-road situations and off. If you're off-road, let's say 3 of you wheels do not have traction, but you have traction on 1 rear wheel, that 1 rear wheel can power you forward. On the road, if you need better performance, say you're autocrossing or something, the car can send different amounts of torque to each wheel independently to help you be more stable and make turns better. Ford has a really cool graphic that shows some of the use cases for that rear torque vectoring in Lobo drive mode. When you turn in, torque shifts to the outer wheel to help you turn better. When you change direction, torque goes to each rear wheel depending on the driving scenario. And when you're accelerating out of a corner, torque goes to the outer wheel to help the car turn and limit understeer. The Ford Maverick Lobo, to me, is a performance street truck that is made out of parts bin performance Ford parts. And that's awesome because it not only keeps the cost down, it gives you a place to start and work on your own street truck. Ford has been really big on backing modifications to vehicles in the 2020s, and I first noticed this when I was at the launch of the big Bronco in 2021. Ford had this massive display of Ford-backed aftermarket parts, basically saying, hey, we want you to take your Bronco and do whatever you want with it, and we will support that. The Maverick feels really similar, like it's a blank canvas, and yeah, you can either keep it the way it is from the factory, or you can make it your own in any way you want. The Ford Maverick Lobo is an homage to the street truck era of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, where people had lowered trucks meant to be performance trucks on the street. And one of my favorite vehicles from this era is one I have not gotten to drive, but it looks so cool. It's the Toyota Tacoma X-Runner. That generation of Tacoma was awesome, and to see it that low, oh, amazing. I have never seen anyone do a big investigation into the end of the street truck era, but I assume there were a few things going on that just made it taper off. That was the Great Recession in America, the rise of gas prices, and the tendency for people in the 2010s to move toward higher SUVs and trucks. People want to be higher on the road, they want to see more, they want to feel safer. Thus comes the end of these low-down vehicles. But we are now in an era of American culture where 2000s culture is back, 2000s style, 2000s fashion, and why wouldn't 2000s era vehicles follow? Fashion is also a big thing inside the Maverick Lobo. You will notice that the stitching is blue and lime green, and on the seats there are all these little speckles that look like graffiti paint. All of that, Ford says, is an homage to streetwear. And in streetwear, sure, not all of your colors have to match, but they look really nice together. The person who chose these colors for the stitching is designer Kristen Keenan, and she worked on the LeBron 12s, Kobe 9s, and KD6 shoes. They're all really cool, and the thing about athletic shoes that I think rocks is the fact that they're able to blend all of these different colors together and make them look really pretty, ideally just like in the Lobo. While we're talking about fashion, do you know what's back in style? Vintage style NASCAR apparel, and I have so much of it thanks to our partner Homefield Apparel. Homefield just came out with a bunch of new NASCAR lines like their Hendrick Motorsports line, and if you want to check it out and get 20% off your first order, my code is Alanis20. It's time to drive the 2025 Ford Maverick Lobo, and I am so excited to be inside this truck because it is so wet outside and it is dry in here. So we're going to talk about interior impressions and driving impressions, and I want to start with the interior. I do really like this interior. I think the styling is great, and yet you could say what Ford says about the colors and the shoe designs and all of that. You could say all of that is marketing, and it is. But I do really respect it because I look at a lot of athletic shoes, and I'm not a big athletic shoe collector. I wear the same combat boots in every video, I'm sure you can tell. But I think they're really cool because they make all of these different colors work really well together, and they just look interesting and they look stylish. And I think that's a really cool thing to bring into a vehicle, to mix different colors together, because so often automakers either do stitching that matches the leather, or they just do one bit of accent stitching. You usually don't see two colors used together, especially not blue and lime green, and it just looks nice in here. I also think the graffiti pattern in this car is really cool because it's not super out there. When Ford said, oh yeah, the interior has this graffiti pattern in it, I was like, that's probably going to be really noticeable. And it's not. It's these little speckles in the seat that you can see if you're looking for them, but that don't just pop out at you. And I think that's super cool and super tasteful. I have this massive center infotainment screen, and it's really responsive. I like it. But the physical buttons situation is not the best. So I have a line of physical buttons below the screen, but they're not for the really, really vital climate controls that you often see buttons used for in modern cars. We have a button for the camera system, which I think is great. But then two buttons down here are wasted on skip track back and forth, like you would see in a really old car. And I just don't think that's a good use of the buttons down there. I think in a modern car, using modern technology, you're probably going to click through your music on Apple CarPlay on the screen. So I think it's a waste to have those two skip buttons down there because why would I use those? I would rather have seat heater buttons or fans or climate control right there. It's just a waste of space. We also have our emergency flashers in that set of buttons. Those could easily be moved up to in between the fans and give you more space, again, for vital buttons that people use, instead of putting all of the climate and seat heaters and stuff in the infotainment. I don't think it's the best choice. It works, but I would rather have physical buttons in addition to that. Something I absolutely love about this infotainment screen is that when I was setting up my phone and pairing it to Bluetooth, it asked me on the infotainment screen, are you a passenger? And I said yes, because I was a passenger. So many modern cars lock you out of doing setup and like major controls in the infotainment screen while the car is moving. And that is super frustrating if you're a passenger trying to set up your phone, trying to do navigation, anything like that. You cannot use the screen's controls because the car will lock you out and say, nope, no using that while moving, that's not safe. And I get that. It's honestly probably a good idea to lock the screen in those situations. But if I can answer, yes, I'm a passenger when I am a passenger, amazing, because then I can use the infotainment screen and set everything up. And I think that's really good. Now we're going to switch to driving impressions. And I will say, as a disclaimer, it is absolutely spitting rain in Southern California. And so we're not going to be able to drive this Maverick Lobo in the way I want to. I would love to take it out into the mountains on the really twisty roads and see what it's like out there. It's not safe. It's not possible. In the tiny amount of time we get with the car, which is like 2 hours, we just can't realistically do that and give you good feedback on how it performs. So I'm gonna tell you the basics about how it drives, and then hopefully we'll be able to get a Maverick Lobo and go more in depth on it later. So first thing I noticed when I got in this truck was that I cannot really tell it's lower than the normal Maverick from the inside of the truck. And the lowering on this truck is not that intense. It's ½ an inch up front, it's about 1 inch in the back. You can see it from the outside when a Lobo is next to a regular Maverick. But inside the truck, it's just such a small difference that if you put me in this truck and I didn't see the Maverick Lobo stitching right here, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the ride height of this truck from the ride height of the normal one. Now, when I use the pedals, that is where it's exciting, because honestly, it sounds pretty good. The EcoBoost sounds nice, and you can hear the turbo spooling, and you hear the turbo spooling immediately. As soon as you just give it the tiniest bit of gas, it just, it's actually kind of obnoxious how well you can hear it. And I love an obnoxious sounding turbo. I mean, that's why people put stuff like blow off valves on their cars. They want their cars to sound silly. And that is so cool that you can get that from the factory and you can just hear those turbos spooling really, really well. It just makes it cooler. Inside the Maverick, it's not super loud, but it's also not quiet in here. There's road noise and wind noise. And I find that it's kind of echoey in here. Sometimes you'll get in a luxury car and you close the door and it just feels very sectioned off from the world. It feels like there's a lot of sound deadening around you. In here, it's kind of echoey. It doesn't feel like there is a bunch of sound deadening all around me. And this was really noticeable when I called a friend. I called on my phone, on speakerphone, and he said, "You sound like you're flying a plane." And I was like, yeah, that's fair. It's kind of loud in here because that echo carries and the phone picks it up when I'm sitting here talking on speakerphone, and it just didn't sound very good for him. Going from a regular Maverick to a Maverick Lobo, it feels like the steering is a little heavier in this truck, which is nice. But the steering rack doesn't feel particularly fast. Now again, we're driving out here in the rain on normal roads, so maybe it feels fast during the right driving scenarios, but it doesn't feel super fast out here. And on it feeling heavier, maybe that's just my mind playing tricks on me, looking for a difference, but you know, it's okay. The Maverick Lobo is decently agile for a truck, and I think some of that is due to the lower ride height, lower center of gravity, and the retuned suspension. Another thing that I think works in its favor is the fact that Mavericks are unibody construction. A lot of traditional trucks are body on frame. Therefore, they're more flexible. You know, the body is on top of the frame. They're like this. Unibody construction is when the body and the frame are together. And I find that crossovers, even if a lot of people don't want to admit it, are more agile on the road than stuff like trucks, big trucks that are body on frame, because they're more car-like. The last thing I want to discuss about driving dynamics is lane keep, because the lane keep system in this Ford Maverick Lobo is pretty good when it's all on. It keeps me in my lane, it steers really well. I have no issue with it. The problem is I had to figure it out because there are different levels of lane keep in this truck. And the problem is it's kind of hard to tell what level you're on. So I found out in the little driver instrument cluster, if the wheel and lane keep icon is white, that means full lane keep is not active. That means the truck will ping pong in the lane to keep you in your lane, but not actively steer you in your lane. That lower level of lane keep has been on a lot of the time I have been driving the Maverick Lobo because of the fact that it's raining, therefore the ground is reflective and it's harder for the truck to see what is lane line and what is normal road. Therefore the truck is like, I can't really tell where the lane is, I can't proactively steer, but I will ping pong when I see the line to keep you in your lane. Then the big lane keep comes on when the truck can see the lines. And that lane keep is really, really good. I just had to really figure out when it was on and when it wasn't on, and that was kind of hard. Overall, I am super glad the Ford Maverick Lobo exists. I absolutely love the turbofan style wheels on this truck. I love that it's a little lower and could probably go even lower if you want to lower it yourself. And I like the energy behind it. I like the fact that we are going back into an era of lowered street trucks. Lifted off-road trucks are great. But trucks don't need to be kept to one genre because truck buyers and truck drivers aren't just one genre of person. And I love that we are getting another genre. Now that we've driven the 2025 Ford Maverick Lobo, it's time to give it a grade. Welcome to Alanis's report card. The exterior on this truck gets an A-. I love the way it looks. The wheels are awesome. The regular Maverick rocks. But as a street truck, and any truck in general, I want it to be as low as possible. So we get a minus there. The interior gets a B-. That is because I really like it. I love the styling on the seats, the stitching, the graffiti print, everything like that is awesome. But it ultimately is a utilitarian interior and the seats aren't the most comfortable in the world. The performance, I cannot give a performance rating right now. As you can see, it is pouring rain. We had about 2 hours in the truck and I don't think it's fair to rate the performance when I really haven't gotten to test it very well, so we're gonna skip that. The value gets an A though. This is great. It's a $35,000 street truck and that rocks. Would I take it on a road trip? Yes, I would. The seats wouldn't be the most comfortable, but we would survive. And overall, it gets a B+ because this is really, really good and I cannot wait to actually get to drive it more. The Ford Maverick Lobo isn't as out there as a lot of old street trucks. It's not stuffed with horsepower, it's not so low to the ground that you'll scrape it, and there's definitely room for more hooliganism. But the Maverick Lobo is exactly what Ford said it is, a canvas. How you paint that canvas is up to you. The Ford Maverick Lobo is a street truck, and like everything else in our culture, it has lived, died, and come back to life. Because life is cyclical, and I really like the cycle that we're in.